All right, then. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I hope you enjoyed the pizza and the drinks. And again, thank you for coming. So if you don't know who I am, probably at this point you know who I am, but if not, and who we are, I'm Marco. I'm the president co-founder of Pacific Hackers. And again, we do a lot of stuff here, so you'll find out in a second. Number one, first of all, again, we are a community here. We're a family, so we have a no asshole rule. So no discrimination, no egos. And so yeah, please treat everybody with respect. Okay. And about my organization, so we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We're in the mission to fix a few things in the cybersecurity field. Number one, diversity. We want more women in the field, more people of color. We want to fix the education system, right? Because what's been taught in schools is not really relevant to the work place. So we want to teach you what you really need to know in order to get a job. And the HR, the hiring process, right? We want to make the direct connection with the managers, right? Instead of you going through the process of, not getting a job to reapply, I don't know how many times, right? So we have this meetup. It's been going for 8 years now. And we started just as a 1 month thing, and now it's becoming like multiple times a month thing, which is, again, it's good. We're growing, so that's always great. So our next event is actually going to be on Saturday. It's in 2 days, 3. And it's going to be a CTF walkthrough. So that's coming. And then on February 11th, we're going to have a event in San Francisco, our first event in San Francisco for the year. And it's going to be, so if you're familiar with Pentester Lab, the founder of Pentester Lab is going to be giving a presentation on web hacking. So it's a workshop on web app hacking. So that's going to be awesome. We're always looking for speakers. So now, as we're expanding to other locations, we're going to be looking for someone to share their knowledge. And again, if you know something, you would like to share that knowledge, or if you would like to start your public speaking career, this is a place to do it. I cannot emphasize it. There's many people that at one point started here. Now they be speaking at B-Sides, RSA, Black Hat, DEF CON. And I mean, some of them don't recognize where they come from, but they started here when they didn't even know how to speak. But we gave them the floor, and now they're doing great, so good for them. We do a lot of community collaboration. So last week, if you were here for the OWASP event, and also we do also with women in cybersecurity, we do a lot of events with them. And as we're growing, we're going to be doing other events with different organizations as well. So this is just a glimpse of things that are happening. So today is the open source virtualization. If you didn't register through using this link, this is your opportunity to win a Raspberry Pi 5 kit. So take a picture and register, because it's going to be a raffle. Did she say the raffle is coming tonight, or?
Yeah, it's going to be tonight. So we'll make sure we have registered by 6:30, and around 6:30 to 7.
Okay, so here you go. I'll pause for a second. So take a picture.
We also have a QR code. Yeah, we have a QR code that he's going to pull up on.
Oh, great. Awesome. All right. Well, all right, cool. Awesome. All right. So again, next month, we're going to have the San Francisco event. And it's going to be at SamCrep headquarters. So, and it's going to be a joint event with OWASP Bay Area. Also, we're having announced it. I'm announcing it here for the first time, but next month as well, a day or two later, we're going to have a pickleball event here in Santa Clara. So if you're into pickleball, please join us. There's going to be free food, drinks, prizes. So again, it's a fundraising event for our nonprofit. Okay. Next month also, like next month, literally, I don't know what am I going to do, but it's just going to be very busy. We're going to be speaking at CactusCon next month. So again, our CEO and Kat, the 3 of us, we're going to be speaking at CactusCon in Mesa, Arizona. And also for our ladies, we have an event on February 21st. And that's going to be the 3rd edition of Galentine. So our director of events, Lauren, she's been coming up with these events for women and empowering women and again, making a safer place for women. So this event goes from 2 to 8. However, the first 2 hours are women's only. And then after that, it's a happy hour. So again, everything, all the information is in our Meetup page. So I'm just passing the information. And again, we're expanding, right? So this year is the year of expansion. So we're moving to South Cal to start our community there. So, and we partner with Scale, the South Cal Linux group conference. They've been running that conference for 22 years. Well, they needed the some security and they invite us to run the security portion of it. So we call it Sunset Con. And it's going to be on March 6th and 7th in Pasadena, California. Okay. And again, we're going to announce this week or probably next week, Hack the Bay. We're coming back with Hack the Bay. So the people who don't know the story, Hack the Bay was created 2 months before RSA. And we just thought it was just going to be a 100-person event. And it turned out to be a 500+ people that we have to end up turning away because we couldn't fit them where we had the event. So this year we're doing a public works, which is a nightclub, and it's a very underground nightclub. So that goes with a hacker vibe that, you know, that's who we are, right? We're hackers. So yeah, so April 28th is gonna be on a Monday between after Visa San Francisco, before RSA. And again, we're shooting for have really good talks and workshops and the usual food and drinks, okay? And also our next, the 6th edition of the Pacific Hackers Conference on November 1st, 2025, right? So I'm telling you now because, you know, now we have a date. Before we used to do it like, oh, I don't know when it's gonna happen. Well, this year is going to be on the 1st. And we've been doing it here at Hacker Dojo, but we've been growing. So again, we started small. My goal for the 2024 was 150 people, and we end up having 186 people, which means we're growing, right? And again, I feel good for that. However, I don't feel good because then that means we have to move out of our workplace, which is Hacker Dojo. We have to go bigger, and we have to find another place just for the conference, okay? And so again, I always like to thank the organizations and supporters, and I always like to thank Hacker Dojo. It's been our home, at least for the conference since 2018, and for the meetup since 2022 after the pandemic. And you know, they're also nonprofit. In fact, I'm a board member for Hacker Dojo. And if you haven't get a tour by Tiana or someone else from the staff, please do so. Otherwise, I can give it to you. This is a makerspace, hackerspace, very focused on software. If you don't know the story, Pinterest started here, okay? And just by people with an idea showing up and creating a great product. What you see here and in the back, those are reserved desks. Every desk is a startup, okay? So you never know who are you talking here. So that's why I said treat people with respect, because you don't really know who's the person in front of you, okay? I'm just saying. And as I always say, thank you for our sponsor, Susa. They were awesome by bringing the pizza, the sodas, the drinks, and thank you guys, appreciate it. And again, I just want to thank all our sponsors. You know, we cannot do it without them. So thank you. And again, we always need your help, and it's not just about money. It's about spreading the word, telling people who we are, what we do. If you have referrals, if you want to get started in cyber, you know, this is a place to do it, right? If you are hiring, let us know that you're hiring so we can find you good people. If you want to share the knowledge, please, there's a QR code to submit for the CFP. If your company is sponsoring, please, you know, let them know that we do all these events and we need help. And the more the better, obviously. And we have a Discord community. So again, if you are in Discord, please sign up to Discord, and we're gonna try to be more active. We haven't, we just started Discord about a year ago, and we slowly been growing the Discord, but we're gonna try to be more, try to engage more in the Discord, okay? And with that, again, You can find me on LinkedIn. I do LinkedIn a lot. Sometimes I go to Twitter or X. You can definitely find me on Discord as Margraf, and or you can just email me. More than happy to assist you. And with that, thank you. I really appreciate you guys coming up tonight and supporting us. Okay. And yeah, with that, I'll introduce Oscar. Thank you. And he's gonna do an awesome. Well, I was told it was not really a workshop, but it's kind of like a workshop. So whatever that is, I know it's gonna be awesome because I've seen his work and I know he's been doing great. So whatever he decides to be, it's gonna be awesome. So awesome, come on over.
Yeah.
Then just go ahead and share your
Cool. Thank you for the introduction, Marco. My name is Austin Iveson. I am a solution architect over at SUSE. And here's just a brief little introduction of who I am. I'm based out of Salt Lake City. I am an avid home labber at home. I ride a motorcycle, have a cat. It's a Maine Coon. It's beautiful. And I love to rock climb. So
go ahead and share your screen.
Oh.
That's on Zoom.
I exited on this. Is okay.
Okay, yeah, that's right. No worries.
Okay. Just the echo, and I needed to
Okay,
it.
yeah, no worries.
Okay, cool. So I am going to give a little bit of a presentation, kind of who SUSE is, because as you can see via this timeline, we have been around forever. SUSE was founded in 1992. I was 1 year old, and then that's when the first Linux distribution came out just a few years later after that. So where I want to highlight some key things here is we have been an open source company, and that has been our ethos from day one. We want to provide enterprise grade software to not only community members and contributors, but to also enterprise customers. So all of our software is open source, and we've actually gone on and expanded from that initial Linux distribution into things like we created a build service. This is actually a completely free build service that we provide to the community. Dell uses it, we use it. Upstream Kubernetes actually builds all of their binaries with this tool that we provide them. And then with the transition from bare metal servers with Linux, obviously we transitioned into managing that with SUSE Manager. And SUSE Manager is a tool built off of the Udini project, if you've heard of that. Think salt minions, etc. for automation. But the big thing there is we want to be able to manage virtual machines as well as bare metal hosts, and we wanted to do it agnostically to the OS. So you could do any distribution of Linux, etc. So the obvious step, and I'm sure you guys knew, back in 2015, we had a big thing come about, container orchestration. And the big one that won out was Kubernetes. And so we acquired a company back in 2020, some of you may have heard of, called Rancher Labs. And they, along with Rancher Labs, came quite a few pieces of technology. For one, Rancher, which is a container management, it's a Kubernetes management platform. And you can do that with an abundance amount of distributions. It also came with our virtualization platform that I'll be presenting on today, then called Harvester, now called SUSE Virtualization. Again, we acquired a company in 2022 to kind of button up our whole portfolio in regards to container platform called New Vector. And we actually open source the product. It has like multiple patents behind it, really runs at that runtime. So container runtime security with a zero trust methodology built into how we secure your Kubernetes environment. But again, completely open source. deploy it with a Helm chart. You're good to go. So that's kind of where I wanted to key you in on where we are developing and wanting to contribute not only to our own platforms, but to open source tools. So for instance, we have the Linux side of the house, been doing that forever. We're experts at it. We acquired great staff, great software with our container management platform, Rancher and New Vector and so forth. But we saw that all moving to the edge. And this is one of my key features that I like us to talk about, is because we can deploy things at scale, manage them at scale via Rancher, via some of our OS builders, just our edge platform. And then that is transitioned into the AI common workloads now that everyone wants to run. And we want to provide a platform. We've actually worked with open source tools to sanitize and fork these essentially and rebase their container images, because it's all opinionated stack built off of Kubernetes, but we sanitize the containers for the AI platform using it's like OLLAMA, OpenWeb UI, and Mulvis for a database there. So again, we want to provide not only an open source platform, but one that gives you a lot of options. So we do have some opinions, but we want you to be able to choose what models you want to run on AI. We want you to be able to choose what OS you're managing with SUSE Manager and what Kubernetes distributions you may be managing as well. So what that kind of looks like here is the full lifecycle management of a cluster. So why is he talking about Kubernetes when he was talking about virtualization? You might be asking. That's because the way we built our virtualization platform, it is all based off of Kubernetes open source tools, cloud native tools, which I'll show you all in a moment. But as you can see here, it exists right here. Harvester is SUSE's virtualization. It is our hyperconverged infrastructure. It allows you to not only spin up, for those traditional workloads, VMs that you can deploy an app on. Maybe it's like a single threaded app and you only need a VM. You don't need it to scale out for Kubernetes. You just need a big fat virtual machine, Minecraft. But anyway, that's my own little home lab development. But we also want you to be able to use those VMs with Harvester for Kubernetes workloads. So, oh yeah.
Okay, new time. You ready to take a question?
Yeah, no, fine, by all means.
The term hyperconverged infrastructure is used a lot by OEMs to sell and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Like Nutanix, HPE.
Mhm.
Are we talking the same thing? Like, you're having a hypervisor and storage.
Yep,
and
we
then
have
you
distributed
virtualize
storage with.
all in one.
Yep,
Okay.
it's
cool.
essentially like under the hood, it is using open source tools, and I can point those out here. Longhorn, which we actually with Rancher Labs is one of the softwares we acquired.
It's the same, right?
Yes.
Like, all right.
Yeah, cool. Yes, and so yeah, I should also touch with Rancher Labs acquisition. We acquired Longhorn, and that's an incubating project in the CNCF. We donated K3S. We are still the largest maintainer. I'm sure you're all familiar with K3S. The advent of I thought he was a mad scientist, Darren Shepard at Rancher Labs, just cutting away at upstream Kubernetes and making a tiny little 200 megabyte binary for Kubernetes deployment. We still maintain that, and we work closely with the CNCF. And again, we want you to be able to interact with old workloads and new workloads in the sense of if you're modernizing and moving to containerized platforms, and we want you to be able to have somewhere to put them. So continue. So again, it's completely scalable. It's completely open source technology. We want you to be able to bridge the gap. We're not trying to be a replacement for the big VMware guys. We're not trying to be like have that full suite of features. That would be impossible. They've had a 30-year head start. We want to say what we find is valuable, what our customers want, and then have you do a little bit of both. So again, the way it's scalable and turnkey, it's actually a single ISO, and you literally just boot it up, and it will include your Kubernetes distribution, your Linux OS, and it will include the tools that you actually spin up KVM machines under the hood. And so that's why, again, completely scalable and turnkey solution that you can boot up and tear down at will at nauseam. So this is kind of the architecture behind it. Again, like I said, SLE Micro there at the base. We have RK2. That is another Kubernetes distribution that we actually released. You might have been familiar with our original Kubernetes engine called RKE. We have actually end of life to that in July because it uses Docker as the runtime, Docker shim. That's not industry standard. So we went to Containerd and have built many tools using RK2, using the Containerd and Nginx, Ingress, and so forth. And then sitting on top of that Kubernetes cluster, you're going to have these three pieces for distributed storage. Longhorn, like I was mentioning, KubeVirt is actually an open source project in the CNCF. You can actually run KubeVirt and spin up VMs, but we found a lot of customers wanted kind of like a unified UI and one location to bring this up. So we built out Harvester and SUSE Virtualization to utilize KubeVirt. So again, like all of our tools, we want to interact with the open source community. So they work with us, we work with them, so forth. And then for the container network interface that is going to be managing all these is Multis. So that allows for like microsegmentation, so forth. Again, other open source tools, Rancher itself is one. Go ahead. We have a whole workshop. I can show you a QR code. It's actually on a paper back there if you want to join me in a few weeks and test it out yourself. But again, so for the modernized platform, we want to give somebody to manage from one place, Rancher Prime, to manage data center type workloads with VMs or, those CSCPs of the world, EKS, AKS, and GK clusters. And then you can also do things at the very edge with things that we've built out that can essentially bootstrap and on boot allow you to see from a little list deployable machines. It's a really cool platform. That's a whole nother topic. So if I come back, maybe I'll do an edge conversation, which I would love to do. But in regards to Harvester, Pixie Boot, single ISO, supports x86 and ARM, and you have such things as like VXLAN is coming out. That's one of the things that I'm pushing really heavily for to microsegment the virtual machines. Cloud Init is actually built in to the VMs, which I like to touch on because I will be showing that off in the demonstration. And again, if there's any questions on anything up here, we can touch on it now or later, but this is kind of the day-to-day operations. We really also believe in like the GitOps methodology. And since these VMs are just CRDs of a Kubernetes cluster, you can take that YAML file, reference it, you can attach USB devices, PCI devices via just a line of code, and then deploy it via YAML. And if you're deploying it in the right Kubernetes cluster with the right privileges and networking, that VM comes up with the proper USBs attached and proper PCI devices, which is, in my opinion, really freaking cool because then you don't even have to leave something like VS Code. Anyway, so because Harvester is built with Kubernetes under the hood, we like to preface or suggest go out and explore the cloud native platform. It's huge. These are all tools that can exist inside of a Kubernetes cluster. Adopt them, use them. You can extend Harvester to use these as well. I've done co-presentations with some open source customers as well as closed source customers that are using our technology because it is just extendable, because it is just Kubernetes. So feel free to explore that. Highly recommend. It kind of can be overwhelming, but I digress. So again, because it comes from a single ISO, it is just simply plug and play. When we have a new version come out, phone's home says, hey, here's an upgrade available. You press that button. Live migration of all the workloads. It's a Kubernetes cluster. It should be highly available. Moves that all over, and you have no zero downtime. We do have vGPU pass-through. I personally can't afford just a big hunkin' NVIDIA card, so I can't show this in the demo. So I wanted to say we do have support for it, but it will pass through to those VMs. You can use those both for virtual machines, or you can use those for Kubernetes clusters. We also have a single root IO virtualization. So if you want to actually have these VMs via a Kubernetes cluster or just a VM access the network card that's on these servers, very specific for telecom. We've had a fair amount of customers over in Europe use this specifically for that. So yeah. So this is a good example of kind of like what it looks like. Very simple diagram. We have the harvester cluster, and then we have the storage. Because the container storage interface is actually just built in, it'll spin up a VM for containers. It'll spin up a VM for Kubernetes, for VMs, and then also for containers. So you have volumes that exist in Longhorn now that are replicating across your 3-node cluster at minimum, right? There are ways to get around that we do support, but again, 3 nodes, you've replicated data completely distributed. So that's essentially how you can also think about how you would extend the capabilities of the harvester cluster. Load balancing, because it's cloud native in principle, you're able to just select what services you want to load balance to and direct traffic to your VMs or your container workloads. We do provide VM migration, so OpenStack and VMware and ESXi. You can copy the virtual MAC address, migrate one VM at a time, export it to the original VMTK, and so forth. So just to talk about some customers that I've interacted with that have use this at scale. ARM has partnered with us. They actually helped us build like the ARM binaries because it was just x86. Obviously, they would help with that. BMW takes down VMs, brings them back up. 2 million is what they've quoted us. They're also using like that SRIOV, which is very important for those edge environments they have, like their near edge, I should say, in manufacturing plants, and then banking, and so forth. So I'm going to do my favorite part. Exit out of this. So this is going to be an introduction to not only, and is this good? I can leave it. So I'm going to sit behind my computer now and kind of explain what you're looking at. Like I said, we wanted a unified platform that you can manage everything. So your Kubernetes clusters, your VMs, your deployments of GitHub repositories and how you want to deploy them to these clusters or VMs. That is all right here. And so the first thing I'd like to say is that this is Rancher. So you actually sign into Rancher to start spinning up harvester-based VM RK2 clusters or K3S clusters. And Rancher actually lives in this little cluster here called local. And that is essentially just, for my use case, 3 Raspberry Pis that are in my garage right now as we speak, with an external load balancing, taking all this traffic to it, and essentially allowing us to see this UI and then interact with any other clusters. So as we see right here, this is the actual harvester Kubernetes cluster. So again, because harvester SUSE virtualization is built using RKA2, we've imported it, and you can actually see it visibly, how many cores it has available, how much RAM. I think I have some big little form factor PCs, 96 gigs each. I think that's cool. MS01s, if you're ever interested in home lab equipment, my mini forms have served me wonders. Got 2 of them, looking to get a 3rd. But anyway, so that's where the harvester cluster is. It's on those boxes, and I can actually see into it right here and actually look and deploy container workloads into that if I want it. I also have another cluster here that is based off of those RK2 VMs. So how do I actually go in and create VMs? I'm going to show that off first before I dig into any of this Kubernetes stuff, because again, we're here for the virtualization portion. But with how we've operated, they're hand in hand. We want you to do both. That'd be preferred. But if you want to just spin up VMs, by all means, we have customers, we have individuals that do that themselves. So if you look at this hamburger menu over here, pops out, you can go explore those clusters, or you can go over to here and click on virtualization management. So when I navigate this, what will happen is it brings up my harvester cluster. And because I only have one, this could be a litany of harvester clusters that you want to manage. It could be for, your house or for work or for whatever. You can all have it in the same location of Rancher. And then I can click on the harvester name, harvester demo environment, and you immediately get a nice little dashboard. Very simplistic right now. You can extend it, get more metrics with monitoring and stuff, but I didn't want to throw in Prometheus and Grafana, which we do support, it's right there. I just didn't want to muddy the water. So this is what we're looking at here is the actual Harvester cluster. There's 2 hosts. Like I said, I have 2 servers at home running. I have 6 virtual machines on them. I have 6 volumes, and I've put 3 images that I can reference when creating VMs. So if I click on this VM, virtual machine, I can actually see them running. I can see what node they are on. I can see what IP address is, and I can even console in. Let's see if this goes over real quick. It'll open up a new VNC, and I can actually start operating with this cluster. Again, sometimes my Rancher is not best practices. It's just on 3 Raspberry Pis. Same kit that you guys will be raffling later today. So shout out to that. But I can actually sign in here and start running commands if I want to. So it's like I ls real quick and see like, oh, there's a txt file, so forth, like cat, do whatever. I've already got access to that VM. But what would happen if I wanted to say, take that VM and migrate it over? Well, I'd just go to this ellipse menu and say, go down to the migration option. There it is. And I choose a node. Well, and as we migrate this, it's still up and running and exists because again, the way this is operated is essentially moving one KVM instance from one node to the other, and it doesn't wait, and it waits until the other one comes up before it starts sending the information, and then it references that same volume that's under the hood. So that same volume is still getting all the data put into it, whether it was on any of the nodes. Doesn't matter because those nodes have been replicated across my cluster. So yeah, pretty cool. And as you can see, that was it. Harvester V2 or Harvester 2, but it's now at Harvester 1. If you want to see what it looks like to create a cluster, let's click this create button up here. And what this is going to allow us to do is select a name. We can say how many instances of this VM do we want? Do we want like 5, 4, 6, whatever, 2? Can give it a name, test name. For reference, I was a software QA engineer at Rancher before I became a solution architect. So testing has always just been in that name will always be part of my naming conventions. So give it 10. Let's see, we can now go to volumes. We're going to select an image. Again, it doesn't matter if you want to use, we support Windows machines as well. So if you wanted to spin up VMs based off of Windows machines for just the virtualization platform, or if you want worker nodes in your Kubernetes cluster using Windows, you can as well. But for an instance, I have the cloud init enabled SUSE Linux Enterprise here because the cloud init portion is important for this option here. Well, I can also show you, hey, here's the list of PCI devices that you could link to this USB, reading this to this VM. I can link a USB device to this VM as well, all from this one page. And again, then at scale, you could just tear it down, but have that CRD YAML file, which I'll show you later as reference. But now I also want to add some configuration steps to Cloud Init. So if you're familiar with Cloud Init, it's just an open source tool to essentially help you stand up VMs. It started with like CSPs and stuff like that. I actually have a template here that I can reference, and I've just set a name, I've set a password. If this is being recorded, you guys now know that. Please don't use that internal use code. I'm enabling the QEMU agent under the hood on this Linux box. So then that allows for Kubernetes clusters to be spun up on it, as well as these IP tables. So I'm just going to click create real quick, double check I have all the basics, volumes. I specified an image. I could add a volume if I want to, but I'm just going to click create. Oh, and I accidentally said 2. So these are going to come up for a second. And while we wait for those, are there any questions? Am I touching on anything that's interesting? Is there specific capabilities you guys are interested in? If there's hardware, so so because it's a Kubernetes cluster, essentially it should, like, unless you lose all servers, so if you. It's all based off of Kubernetes, like, so there's a bunch of controllers that are sitting in a Kubernetes cluster monitoring the state of these, because they're just, these VMs are all being launched via a pod in a Kubernetes cluster. That pod spins up the KVM. So if there's a hardware failure, it will just allocate, like, say I have these two machines here. If there's a hardware failure, it will take this one that's on this second node and just automatically put it onto the first, even if it's not redundant. Just because it says this state of this pod deployment essentially needs to be at 2. And so then it puts it on the other node. And then if your hardware is gone, you just add another node to the cluster and it's immediately accessible. It's a very easy process to add more hardware essentially to this environment. And then adding more servers, or yeah, it's done by who's doing the reallocation of like the. Yeah, it's all the tools inside of well, yes, RKE2, Rancher Kubernetes Engine 2 will just take care of all of that. Yeah. Now it's a pretty cool process, and I'll show you. Actually, so these all came up as you saw it. Didn't take long, but let's take a gander, because this will probably give you some clarity of what's going on behind the hood. These are the virtual machine side of it. Let's go look at what it looks like as a Kubernetes cluster. So I'm going to hit this hamburger menu again, and this is the explore page for Kubernetes clusters. Or I can go home and click manage, and as you can see here, it's managing Kubernetes clusters. One thing I would like to really stress too is these are all RKE2 based Kubernetes clusters, and you could actually create a node driver based off of, we have some other things in here, Equinix, we have IBM's cloud, we have Nutanix. They could use their VMs to essentially, their hypervisor to spin up RK2 clusters. So you don't even have to use ours, because again, Rancher's been interoperable, SUSE has been interoperable from day one. But back to the sauce. So these clusters, we need to take a look at them and see what's going on. I'm gonna show you how to create one, and then we're gonna dig into it. Sorry, I feel like that's a better understanding. Sorry. Okay, basically. Okay, so what we handle is all of this. This is all our product. So I don't have anything that I'm showing off that is outside of our wheelhouse. This is all of our portfolio, both from the OS that I've used, to the Kubernetes distribution, to the storage, to everything. And again, it's all open source, so a lot of that is interchangeable. Harvester will allow for CSIs to be swapped out here in this next release. So that's essentially what's going on. That's who's taking care of it. It's all of our software. Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. We actually have. Okay. I mean, we actually do have. That's a whole nother conversation. We actually have tools that would monitor basically the processes, and actually the payloads that are going on in between the network. It's called SUSE Security or NuVector, and we actually have a way to lock down this environment with that tool that says, hey, through automation, we've learned what we expect your workloads to do, and this one's acting here. We're just going to stop it from happening. And then in regards to from an observability standpoint, we also have tools that allow us to see any kind of configuration and then a rollback step. So hey, this is when it was working yesterday at noon. Roll back to that and everything should be good, because it will change the YAML files under the hood, because it's just Kubernetes cluster. It's just manifest files forever. But yeah, so hopefully that answers your question. Cool, awesome. Now I'll create cluster. Was there a question? Sorry.
your licensing model? For not just Rancher, but
The entire suite, we have some, I'm a solution architect. I like to do this stuff. We offer a suite of it, you know, you can get SUSE virtualization, Harvester. It actually has an entitlement for Rancher built in. I know that. We also offer like a suite which covers everything. And then we also offer, like, if you just wanted support or to interact with RKE2, we also offer that as well. Or just Rancher if you have, you know, because again, you might see this when I click create. We know that Harvester is a new tool. We know that there's other platforms, other service providers. So we know that you are going to either spin up a Kubernetes cluster up in the cloud, or if you're going to use your own on-prem stuff, we do have a node driver that vSphere helps us maintain, that you can actually use those VMs to spin up RK2 clusters. So you could just get a Rancher entitlement. It's these guys, Spencer and Roman back here.
Yeah. It's an annual. Yeah.
just here's how it's packaged. Relevant, how they,
Mhm.
how they bundle it.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Can you go back to the cluster page?
The clusters page.
Yeah. Where you're listing all the.
So either this one.
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
So like I see like in total there is like 10 nodes. So I'm trying to understand. It is like a Kubernetes cluster running on top of another Kubernetes cluster.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, so that's what KubeBird is, and we
Yeah.
took that and we built Harvester, and that's what's so cool. The one thing this local cluster is not, it's its own separate entity. So that is again, that's my 3 Raspberry Pis that I put SUSE Linux on. I've then put RK2 on, and then via Helm chart I installed Rancher. And that's the only part that in this screen that isn't just Kubernetes on top of Kubernetes. Essentially, does that answer your question?
Yeah, but like in total, like you have like 10 physical nodes for this example.
So for this circumstance, I actually have these 2 right here and these 3 right here. Those are the only physical machines. These 5 on this Pacific Hackers Kubernetes cluster, those are all VM based. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And then like I already you mentioned a couple of ISO images.
Huh?
All my home lab images are like Debian based.
Okay, yeah, you can.
Can I install?
Yes.
Is it like Kubernetes running Kubernetes? Can I install Harvester in my existing cluster?
So how that works with Harvester is you could do like a nested virtualization. That wouldn't be like supported or something that we really say is best practices. What you'd want to do is take some bare metal hardware that you have, put a Harvester on it, and then you could use your Debian images to spin up virtual machines, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Harvester, because it is like that hyper-converged where, what was your name, sir? Keith? Yeah, Keith mentioned that it's like, oh, you provide the storage, you provide the networking. We provide all of that in like an opinion way. So then you can go have Kubernetes clusters or VMs, however way you want to mix it up. Like if you want Debian, if you want Ubuntu, if you got an Arch Linux ISO that you want to throw on the VMs, you can do that. Just make sure you package it up for whatever you want it to use for. So if it's for Kubernetes, you're probably going to want to add some very specific things that don't come inside of like Arch Linux or Ubuntu.
Like, I have to install all my.
Yeah. That's the one ask. Yeah, that's the one ask that we have. Just for the Harvester bit, but if you wanted to run Rancher, by all means, run it on Debian, run it on Ubuntu. You can put Rancher on RHEL. I know he said not to mention that, but I did. So creating a cluster, this is what it would look like. Because again, I'm sure you guys have noticed like the ecosystem seems to be switching from traditional workloads to now containerized apps because it allows for the scalability that Kubernetes has built out. And so via the automation tools that it provides, you can also bring up these clusters and manage both those traditional workloads and these containerized ones. So this is this should be familiar-ish to what you guys just saw when we spun up that VM, except now instead of just a VM, we have machine pools. So if you're not familiar, how many of you guys have used Kubernetes? Are you guys like super familiar, kind of new? Because, all right, so there's also something you guys should notice, or not notice, take note of, is I can give you guys a great hands-on experience with Kubernetes, introduce you to some of the principles of both containerized applications and Kubernetes clusters, and give you essentially like a guide of how you can get it up and running in your home lab, or, well, yeah, only home lab. I will not recommend you to take what we do in that demonstration to the production. I've seen it. It's crazy. But anyway, so we're going to go ahead and just find a namespace where I want this cluster to exist. I'm going to name this user as Slez. I'm going to up this to just 3 so we can make it a highly available all role cluster. All roles. Testing 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to give it an image. Use that same cloud init based image that I have previously created. I'm going to select a VLAN that you can create on the Harvester cluster so that you can, again, segment out your Kubernetes clusters and VMs. I'm going to come back to this cloud init configuration. I'm going to make sure that everything looks good there, and it does. And then here's where you can go in and kind of adjust any cluster configuration. You can select a container network interface that we support. There's multiple there. Cilium for those ePBF aficionados that love it. Flannel, Multis, and so forth. It does come in built in with Core DNS, Nginx, and metric server. There's a whole other list of things that you can customize, but I'm just going to click create. And then essentially what that allows this to do, this will take a second. It's communicating, phoning back home. So while we wait for this to come up, the end product will look something along the lines of this. It'll have a machine pool. You can go and look at the provisioning logs of everything in this cluster. And then if you want to explore it and actually see the workloads running in it, we can look at the deployments. Oops, sorry, it was red and I clicked on it. Go to the cluster. We can actually click and start running kubectl commands in this cluster. So for instance, what I did is I navigated to this downstream cluster that I have pre-provisioned. I'm going to do kubectl commands by clicking on this little button up here. I can also download the kubeconfig or copy it to the clipboard, and then you can put it in your own terminal and start managing these clusters all from your own command line, which has been a really cool. And I should also specify it automatically via your auth provider. I'm using GitHub. It will give you the administration rights that you have previously been allocated by simple RBAC rules. And essentially what that allows a user to do is sign in, download the kubeconfig as just a user or an admin or even a read-only. So these people could just see what's going on in the cluster, but they may not necessarily know any other person's deployments or whatnot. So if we want to take a look, I'm going to change this namespace to all, and we can actually go into the workloads and click on that. And apparently my dashboard just failed, but that's okay, because I really wanted to show you guys what was going on with one of these. Oh, no, I wanted to show this cluster. I so apologize, because I wanted to show you the pods that are running our KVM instances down low. So if we come into this, you should see VIP. Virt launcher. That's the one. So these guys right here, these are actually these are just pods that are essentially the virtualization platform that are handling those KVMs down underneath the hood. And so you could start your troubleshooting process by coming in here and saying like, oh, is the Virt controller actually navigating and bringing up those VMs that I expect them to be? And if they're not, you can come and start troubleshooting with like the you can execute the shell right into the cluster, into the container, start running commands. You can start checking for proper configurations there, and so forth. And so again, because these Vert launchers, these are all just pods that are essentially have a sidecar accessing that KVM and allowing you to run commands on that bare metal because we didn't want any lag. So we wanted to make sure we were actually interacting with the KVM at the process level, not just at the pod level. So yeah, it's kind of the basics that I wanted to touch on. I wanted to show some maybe charts off. So if you actually look at what we support in the cloud, not in the cloud, but what we support in our catalog, we have a Litmus, we have Prometheus Grafana, Istio for service meshes, Harbor for container registry, and all of that a lot of this comes built in Helm charts that you can actually access and start downloading from that. Remember that cloud native landscape. You can start using those tools immediately just from our catalog. You might use Jenkins, you might use K10, Kasten. I've actually interacted with that myself a fair amount. KubeCost. And then we also have a whole nother collection to get access to with a subscription. But that's for another time. Does anyone have any questions? Any?
Can I create a cluster program?
Yes. Yeah. So so if you wanted to do it via Harvester's provider, for Terraform, we have that as an option. If you wanted to bring up VMs and then cluster them all together, there's actually ways to do that via our API, as well as our continuous deployment tool that we have built into this. So since everything's just API calls, you can actually do it via that. We also offer, are you familiar with CAPI, Cluster API? Basically, it's a way to do exactly that as well. We also offer that with Rancher Turtles. So it's a little program on the side that sits inside of the Rancher cluster. It allows you to create what's called a cluster class. That cluster class has all these specifics, and then you just say like 20, and then boom, it's up and running, depending on how fast your hardware is. But yeah, it's up and running. Cool. Yeah, and again, Terraform too. If you've ever used Terraform, we do have providers for Harvester. Yep, there is. And then you can obviously use that same provider for, we actually have it for just Rancher in general. So if you wanted to use it up in any of the public clouds, we have a provider that we maintain for Azure, AWS. I'm not going to say GCP because I can't remember if we actually do manage that one or not. But we have it's called Rancher V2 in Terraform, and it lists all the things that you can deploy programmatically. Even some of our applications are in there, such as like SUSE security or new. So, yeah. Thank you for the question. Any other questions? Cool. So that pretty much sums up what I have to give, except now I want to make sure that you guys can see a little bit of our QR codes. So we are hosting a convention. If you guys wanted to register, you could come out in March. You could see me talk about our edge use cases. We have customers and users that are going to be there, basically exploring like our whole portfolio. There's going to be SUSE virtualization, heavily talked about use cases where they essentially take like a single box of SUSE virtualization, have its own Git repository in there, and on boot, it's running the application. It's running a Kubernetes cluster. It's doing all of it just at the simple press of a power button because their end user needs that, which I think is super tremendous and cool. So if anyone wants to scan that, feel free. This is kind of what I was alluding to. If you guys want to get hands-on experience with Rancher, there's going to be a virtual workshop. We actually do them, I think, on the East Coast and West Coast twice a month. But this is next week, January 30th. Feel free to scan this. We'll teach you how to deploy clusters. We'll teach you how to deploy Rancher. And then we'll teach you how to deploy some like applications like WordPress in there as well. And then make sure you guys get this. This is specifically for you. Please, I'll leave this up and running just scan that QR code and we can see who gets this Raspberry Pi 5. Yeah. And thank you again for Mojo Dojo or the Hacker Dojo. Hacker Dojo hosting this. Marco, everyone, thank you so much. And yeah, feel free to chat me up if you want.
All right, so that was awesome, guys. Thank you so much. Awesome. And yeah,
Thanks.
so well, I don't know if you know, but you know, Levski, he has his workshop on Kubernetes security, and I think after what we're seeing today, so I think we're probably gonna try to do something here. 'Cause he's the man when it comes to Kubernetes.
Nice.
He has talk at RSA on behalf of Pacific Hackers on Kubernetes and stuff. So definitely looking forward to do more collaboration. So yeah. So again, that's it for tonight. We kind of ended a little bit early than we usually do, but you know, come back on Saturday. We have again the CFT walkthrough. And again, you saw the other events we have for next month. We're gonna have a lot, and yeah, just keep on looking at our website, Meetup, or we just recently started doing more marketing on Eventbrite. So again, please help us by spreading the word. And again, thank you, Susa and Austin and Spencer for the goodies and everything. And yeah, well, with that, I think it's still pizza, there's still drinks. If you guys have more questions for Austin or anything like that, please, you know, ask him. And thank you guys, appreciate it. Thank you for the support. And yeah, have a good night. I'll see you guys on Saturday. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, and for the Roswell, yes.
He just wants the pie.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why it's like, you guys take it home, you know, we'll keep it. No, please go ahead and scan it and
Yeah, in about 5-10 minutes, we'll do it for collecting the contacts.
yeah, all right.
Give you guys about 5 more minutes.
All right, so restaurant break, and then we'll do the raffle.